What's up, everybody? Welcome to On the Record, a punk music podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Newman, alongside Ben Brennan. How's it going, Ben?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Awesome. On the Record is a fan podcast where we discuss the Fat Records catalog album by album, side by side. We're not professional music critics. We're not musicians. We're just music nerds that want to talk about the records that got us into underground music in the first place. Ben, I'm really excited to talk to you about Lagwagon's debut LP, Duh. But first, let's just give a little bit of background on us and tell people why we've chosen to focus on Fat Wreck instead of a different label. Like, why not Epitaph or Discord or Lookout?
Alex, it's because the early days of our friendship involved hours spent listening to the Fat Records catalog of the 90s and early 2000s. Not only will this be a journey through music fueled by beer and speed, but also an odyssey of friendship.
Speed, huh? What kind of speed? Can you be more specific about
Methamphetamines, man. So as I was
my favorite kind.
doing research for the next episode, I had come across a reference to the Propaganda lyric kind of mocking Fat Wreck about when did punk rock become so safe. That was a reference to a lyric on War on Errorism, which said something along the lines of the kids who used to live for beer and speed now want their fries and Coke. So I think that was just kind of kicking around in my head as a description for the music we're going to be listening to.
Gotcha. Yeah, they really got NOFX with that one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's do the liner notes.
Yeah. Let's go through the liner notes. So the album we're talking about today is Duh by Lagwagon. It was released on October 1st, 1992. The band lineup is Joey Cape on vocals, Chris Flippin on guitar, John Dewey also on guitar, Jesse Bugileone on bass, and Derek Lord on drums. It was recorded at West Beach Recorders in Hollywood, California, and produced by Fat Michael. Okay, let's talk about side one now.
All right, let's get into it. So I guess we just start at the top. I'm a big fan of opening tracks to records, and it's always interesting to me, like, how they do or don't really set the tone of an album. But I think that in this case, Tragic Vision it's definitely not my favorite track on this record by a long shot, but it does a good job at sort of setting the stage of like what the record is. Most of the songs sound like Tragic Vision. So I think it's consistent with that.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that my note for it was just that it sounds like a rawer or more rough Haas song, like something that might appear on Haas, but just like a bit more raw and rough than kind of that more polished, finished product that you end up hearing on Haas.
Yeah, I think I could see that. And you do see you see glimpses of the sort of future band that Lagwagon eventually becomes in this record. But something that I noticed listening to this, I mean, it's been, how long had it been for you since you had actually sat down and listened to this record? Had you ever listened to this entire record?
Oh, definitely listened to the entire record before, but it like hadn't been like maybe age 22 at the oldest. So,
wow.
13 years about.
Yeah, it's probably been about the same for me. Like full disclosure, I fucking love Lagwagon. Still do. But it comes and it goes these days. It used to be, especially back when, you and I first became friends, like Lagwagon was like probably my favorite band at the time. And I listened to them all the time, but I'd never really listened to this one specifically that many times. And I kind of feel like since we've started talking about doing this and we've had to like listen to this record, this is probably the most I've ever listened to the record in such a short period of time. Because I've listened to it, in the past couple of weeks, I've listened to it like 10 or 15 times. And it's definitely I've come around on some of the stuff that I didn't like so much about it, I think years and years ago. But something I noticed about like the Tragic Vision does like right off the bat, is the amount of social commentary that's present was kind of surprising, just because I don't necessarily sort of associate at least my favorite Lagwagon material with like a lot of like heavy social commentary. It seems like Joey Cape tends to, like at least in later records, seems to go more towards the personal, which I vibe with a little bit more. But especially on Tragic Vision, the social commentary is like front and center. It's talking about how TV or the media affects people's worldview, specifically kids in this case. It's the example that he gives. But I think the lyrics are maybe a little bit melodramatic, especially he mentions sixth grader on crack at one point. But
That exists in some places.
Of course, but I just he does talk about a bunch of like kind of stuff that I think is a little bit dramatic, but that's obviously what he's going for. But I think if there's one thing that kind of like makes me like laugh a little bit at the lyrics here, it's he says always a rock star on empty TV, but empty is a play on MTV. And I just don't think that translates these days.
I'm not sure how clever that really would have been in 1992 either.
I kind of feel the same, but maybe it was a thing. Maybe it was a thing that people said. I have no idea. You can write in to the podcast and let us know. Yeah, Tragic Vision. It's a solid opener for this record. It sets the tone. But going into Foiled Again, man, I don't know about you, but this one, this is the one song in the record that straight up doesn't really work for me.
Weird. This was not the one that I would have picked.
Really?
I thought it was not bad. I didn't think it was great. I liked the rhythm changes. Maybe that's what turned you off so much.
You want to know the thing that really turned me off? It's the
What?
very beginning of the song. The very beginning of it, fucking, like, it's so jarring, and I just don't like it. I hate the way it begins. It's just like he goes straight into this like vocal line that follows the guitar line, and it just doesn't work as like a way to open the song for me personally. It's just not really. It's so like jarring to the point where I immediately kind of want to skip the song, but it doesn't last that long. But then like the next part, so this song, especially this next part where they use like a really cheesy effect that reminds me of like, I don't know, almost reminds me of something you'd hear in like a New York hardcore band do in the 90s. They do that like echo effect that they put on a couple of words.
Oh, like yeah.
Yeah, he's like now you say it's over, and then it's like over. It's like, and then it does it again, like 2 lines later, and it just comes off as so cheesy, especially now. Like, I mean, I feel like in the 90s it probably even would have come off as a little cheesy, but it just seemed like a kind of like a novelty thing that bands were probably doing around the time. And thankfully it's the only time on this record that they do it. They use a lot of backup vocals, but this is the only time I think that they do the the weird echo thing. But I mean, so how did you feel about this one?
Are you still talking about Foiled Again?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I'd already. Yeah, I just kind of thought it was not bad. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I will say that in general on side A, not bad is something that I wrote about a lot of the songs. Like,
Right.
It was like, I definitely think side B is a bit stronger in terms of hits.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so of the songs that are on side 1, I think for me, like, Angry Days is not just the standout. It's not just like, it's I mean, it's almost the best track on the record, but not quite. But what I think is most interesting about Angry Days is that it really shows the direction, like more than any other song on the record, like where Lagwagon eventually goes. It's way more melodic than most of the other songs, and it's actually just like a really well constructed song where some of the other songs maybe feel a little cobbled together in some ways, but I really like the like it's a bit more mid tempo too, so maybe that's why it stands out as well. But it's definitely melody that makes it stand out the most.
Yeah, those are all things that I thought about. That like that song is definitely, I think, for sure the best song in this side of the album.
Yeah.
My very succinct note on it was just good Lagwagon song that is way too long. I think that was probably my only gripe about the song, was that it could have just afforded to be a little bit shorter and a little bit like tightened up. But yeah, it sounds like, you know, a lot of their better songs as they go on.
Yeah.
Very, very good song.
Yeah. I agree. And I guess I personally I like the guitar solo that's in the middle of the song. And it is a little long. It's maybe like it maybe shouldn't have been that long. But I thought it's a really good guitar solo. And then what I like the most about it is that it's sort of it gives them the opportunity to sort of do a bit of like a change up right after that, where he just sort of like slows the tempo down, I think even a little bit more. And I mean, this is one of the few songs where it feels like Joey's like really like trying to sing a bit, as compared to a lot of the other songs where he's just kind of going as fast as he possibly can. And you really feel that when you go into Noble End, which comes right after it, which I think, for me, I mean, I look at this, I look at like Noble End, like the lyrics and everything, and this is Lagwagon trying to be Bad Religion.
That, yeah, I said like, it's not the sound that they're known for, but for what it is, it was kind of not bad, kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I just really felt like it was them trying to do a Bad Religion song, especially when you look at the topic of choice for the lyrics, which is it's about the loss of young lives in the military, and it just very very much feels like something Bad Religion would do.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like, I think Bury the Hatchet sounds just sounds like a NoFX song to me. For the most part, like just like musically. There are other parts, I guess some of the vocals that they do on Bury the Hatchet don't really remind me of NoFX much, but it's just the music that really makes me think of that. And Child Inside, it's whatever. It's fine.
So that's the one that I thought you would have said should have been cut.
I don't like the end of that song. I think
okay.
I think Joey Cape's like really straining to do those vocals at the end. He's just doing something that he shouldn't do at this stage in his career with his vocals, and I'm just like, oh man, is it just gonna end? Please end.
the progression of my notes for this song were bad Lagwagon song, then maybe not, and I've got the shrugging ASCII guy, and then the last note on it is definitely bad. Cut this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of with you in some regard. Like, it's really like the end of the song is what makes me just want to skip to the next track. It's like the last like 30 seconds, especially. I'm just like, all right, it's over. And then then there's Bad Moon Rising, which I just don't know why it's here. Why is it here? Why did they cover this song and put it in the middle of the fucking record?
Is it don't they do that same damn thing with the Agent Orange cover too? They just do it like right in the middle of Let's
Oh
talk
yeah, but like
Jones.
that one fits into the record so much more. This one is just like so, I guess it is the last song on side one, so maybe that was uh part of the reason why they did that, but like, the way that we experienced it was not on vinyl. It was definitely on CD, but
Even easier, you can skip it.
yeah, you can skip it. That's for sure.
But
And I just never really like I don't get why it needs to be here. I would
well,
I would just say throw this one away.
wasn't this like around the time? Like the '90s was a period where like punk bands covering like classic rock songs was like a like a thing that people liked, even if they didn't like punk bands, right?
Oh, really? Like, do you have
I
any
thought
other
so.
examples?
So, where's that like Brown Eyed Girl cover that you could
That was
find?
Lagwagon.
Oh, that was also maybe it's just maybe I'm just mistaking Lagwagon for all for this
Yeah.
as a trend. But I
Yeah.
swear there's more to it though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
you had
you probably find
those
a bunch of
there
examples.
was a compilation of them, right? Oh, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there was at some point. Somebody probably made, I mean, they made compilations of everything, it seems like,
I, I
especially
just
back then.
I can't imagine a band doing that now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing is like it's not a bad cover. It's just
No.
I just don't know why that needed to be on the record. Like it just seemed like a thing that you just like it seemed like a B-side to me.
Yeah, put it on the B side of a single.
Right. That's usually what I reserve. Like in my mind, that's what covers are they're for. They're to be on like the B sides of singles.
Yeah.
Um, but it just feels like the punk version of that song. It's executed well. It's not like I listen to it and hate it. I think it's fine, but it just doesn't fit on this record at all. Before we move on to side two, let's do some shout outs. First, I want to give a shout out to our friend Justin Schaefer for all of his recommendations on the gear that we needed to get this podcast up and running in the first place. It was immensely helpful. Justin co hosts a long running comedy podcast called Big Snackers, which is a lot of fun, and we encourage everybody to go check that out. You can even tune into the live recording of the show every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Big Snackers. So give them a listen. Ben, do you have any shout outs?
Yeah, so the inspiration to do this show came from listening to a couple of podcasts. First being the End on End podcast that covers the Discord Records discography, and also the Where It Went podcast, which covers the Revelation Records discography. Definitely worth checking out if you like punk music. All right, let's flip her
sure.
over to side two.
Cool. Let's get into it.
So, well, let's just start from the top. Beer Goggles. It is one of the fucking hits.
Oh yeah, it's a great one. I really like the
Absolute
song.
classic Lagwagon song.
Yeah.
And I think the most interesting thing that stood out to me was that a song titled Beer Goggles, looking back to this song with 2021 eyes, is that the most questionable line in the entire thing is when he says, "I'm thinking, where's my car?" You think that a song titled Beer Goggles might really, run afoul in some much more egregious ways. But like the thing
absolutely.
The thing I found to be most shocking was that, oh God, he's being really flippant about drinking and driving.
Yeah, and he says it like as he's like talking to this girl. So it's sort of, to me it reads as like oh, I might get laid. Where's my car at?
Oh yeah. DUI.
But yeah, I like the lyrics are funny. And it is like a familiar story to anybody that like hangs out in like a music scene. Like, how many times did you and I go to shows and like you see whether it's local bands or bands on tour, like if it's a small show and there's maybe not a lot of people there, the bands hang around and they drink. And that's sort of like the story of this song, is that they're just like they played a small show and they're just like, fuck it, let's get wasted. And they're just having a good time. And I think the music's really really fitting. Like the structure of the song is really fitting. It's just sort of like careens out of control
at
some point.
Like like that song and one other song on this are just, in terms of, I feel like, songwriting, are just on just a completely different level of it than everything else on the record.
What other song? But before,
Oh,
what's the other song?
Mr. Coffee, of course.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that one. But like last couple of things on Beer Goggles, something that I thought, maybe, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this or not, but I thought that this, like, listening to the song now, it kind of reminds me of Propaganda. Like maybe specifically Back to the Motor League, just like the sort of just the sound of the guitar and the way they're playing. There's something about it that made me think of that song specifically. Maybe it's just like also just like the way he like sort of the song builds too. I think is really great.
Yeah, and there's a cadence, I think,
Right.
in both of them that's pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
Never thought about that. I have to like put them on a playlist back to back.
I think there's some
Listen to it over
vague
and over
similarities
again.
to the music. But there's maybe like some riffs that make that they're probably like both pulling from the same sort of influence too, because this record does feel like it's definitely got a lot of the same influences that the Propaganda likes to pull from.
Yeah. So as far as the other thing that I think is actually similar between those two is, this is kind of a far out theory, but do you know how with there's the car song motif with like shoegaze, where like all those bands write fucking dumb songs about driving in cars and shit like that, and like
I haven't heard that.
The music itself, like Swerve Driver's, of course, like the best example of this, but like the music itself is meant to like evoke feelings of like going on like long drives and stuff like that. And I feel like both Beer Goggles and Back to the Motor League have kind of like a punk version of it, where like you feel like you're driving with the song.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know,
yeah,
like,
I could see that. Yeah,
like there's like momentum to the way the song plays, and that feeds into that feeling. Just to
for sure
get a little out there. And then so Inspector Gadget and Parents Guide to Living. So I think in certain instances they're one track, and in other instances they're two tracks.
I wish they were separate tracks all the time. Please.
I wish that they just weren't on it. I was not super into Parents Guide to Living. I do kind of think that like the Inspector Gadget part makes it a little bit better, but
I kind of like Parents Guide to Living. It's not like a standout necessarily, but it's a fine song. But Inspector Gadget is exactly like Bad Moon Rising. I'm just like, why is it here? Why isn't this a bonus track? Like Inspector Gadget to me feels like the the typical type of track that bands in the 90s especially would just put at the very end. Like it's like, oh, you waited until the very end of the song, there's like a gap of silence, and then all of a sudden here comes this weird thing, this weird little Easter egg. And that's what Inspector Gadget feels like to me. That's what it should have been. I don't know why it sits where it does in the record. It just seems random. Like they just had no idea where to put it, but they're like, oh no, it's going on the record and we're gonna put it there. But they did it, and I don't know why. But it doesn't bother me necessarily. It's just like, why? Why is it there? And Parents Guide to Living is, yeah, it's fine. Not really a standout in any way. But then we get to Mr. Coffee, which I think, I mean, it is the hands down winner of this record.
Oh yeah, for sure. Mr. Coffee's the best song.
Yeah,
I think it is the best '90s punk song about coffee. And
you did some research, didn't you? You looked around for some other coffee related songs. I know Descendants.
I don't know.
Descendants probably have a couple.
Well, not in the '90s though.
Oh, true.
They only have one in the 90s, and that's actually the only other one I can really think of.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if people can submit some others, but
Please let us know any other punk rock coffee songs.
I love this song. I actually think this song or Know It All was actually the first song to really hook me on Lagwagon. Uh,
Yeah.
I remember that I actually distinctly did not care for May 16th too much when I first heard it.
Really?
It wasn't what I wanted at the time because
Mm-hmm.
it sounded much closer to something like a Newfound Glory than what I was really looking for at like age 15 or 16.
Mm-hmm.
And couldn't really appreciate it as much until I heard Mr. Coffee and Know It All about Haas at some point.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like the early Lagwagon material goes, Mr. Coffee and Know It All are two of the absolute best. But specifically Mr. Coffee, I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, this song is hilarious. Like, why? Like you look at and then like you look at like a lot of the songs in this record, and it is interesting. It's an interesting mix of topics. You've got songs that are very serious, like a whole bunch of songs here that are like very serious, and then you've got just a couple of goofy covers, like you got and then you've got something kind of funny like Beer Goggles, and then there's Mr. Coffee, which is just like it kind of looks like a joke track, but it's somehow the best song on the record in general, because it's number one for me. It's very relatable. I mean, I relate so hard to those lyrics, and it's silly, but like I definitely do. But something that I sort of thought about the song, and this probably wasn't intentional, but it does kind of feel like the song itself follows a caffeine high. Like it starts off like kind of slow, and then he has his coffee and he's going faster and faster and faster until you get to the very end where he's just like, drinking coffee, and it just like, and then it finally comes to like this sort of like crash at the end.
No,
it
it's
it reminded me of like an actual caffeine high.
Mr. Coffee in terms of like, because I feel like we could probably create like a taxonomy of Lagwagon songs to like classify the types of songs they are, and I feel like Mr. Coffee and Beer Goggles would probably both go in the same category as Razor Burn.
Yeah, definitely.
Like just stupidly well written songs about stupid stuff.
Yeah, and it's those. I mean, those are examples of, like, where Lagwagon's like sense of humor really comes through. And they're a funny band. Like they can do some stuff that's it's simultaneously really catchy and just really entertaining in general. Definitely got a good sense of humor.
They're funny, but it's not like, most of the time at least, it's not like joke song.
No, not like that. But
like it's just there's a lot of humor in the lyrics or the topic they're choosing to. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I mean you could also say the same. You can like it's not quite as overt, but you can definitely get some of that in their the final song on the record, and the song that's named after their band, Lagwagon. It's kind of funny, just like they're kind of just poking fun at their whole situation. But what did you think of Mind and Matter? Because to me, this was the song that just like should not even be here. And it just doesn't like. I just feel like you just cut it and nobody misses it.
Okay, actually, I think that it has to be there.
Why?
It has to be there because there's this idea in pro wrestling known as bathroom break or cool down matches. So if you have a really if you have a really big exciting match happen, then you want to follow it up with something people don't give a shit about because they're all going to be going out to like get like popcorn or like take a piss or whatever. So you need that song to be in there following Mr. Coffee, or
Okay.
neither of the two songs that follow will work.
Okay. All right. You know what? I'll buy that.
I mean, it's not a great song. Like everything you're saying about it is absolutely correct, but
the fucking song is just it's flat. Like the
yeah,
tempo never really changes. It's just kind of like there, and it just kind of it just washes over you, and you're just like, oh, this is fine. And then you move on.
What'd you think about Stop Whining?
I thought this sounded like another one. It sounded like another attempt at doing something Bad Religion. It didn't. And I don't like it as much as Noble End. But to me, they're Stop Whining just feels like Lagwagon trying to do Bad Religion.
I just thought it was too long.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I thought that the title, or not the title track,
It's the
is that what Nom de Plume is? Probably not.
Sure.
I thought it was fine.
Yeah. I tend to like Lagwagon, the song. It feels like it's another. It's very much in the vein of Beer Goggles in terms of how they like wrote it. And part of that I think is also because like it's another song where they have like people like actually just like kind of like having conversation in the middle of it and talking and stuff, which they kind of do in Beer Goggles. But I like the guitar solos in it. It's a decent song. Like and it's one that when I thought about it before I went back to the record, I would always think, I was like, oh yeah, that song. Like I don't really want to revisit that because I probably won't like it as much as I maybe did years and years ago. But that one kind of surprised me. I was like, I listened to it and I was like, hey, I actually kind of like this. But it's not a standout, but it's entertaining. All right. Any more thoughts on side 2?
Not really. I mean, I thought it was the stronger of the two sides.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely. I think it has. With Beer Goggles and Mr. Coffee, it's definitely like kind of a no contest for me. Anyway, let's move on to our next segment, which is intended to sort of expand the conversation a little bit beyond just Fat Wreck. And we want to talk about other albums that came out around the same time as Duh, just to give it a little bit more context than the punk music scene at the time, and compare and contrast with some of its peers. And this segment is called Rival Records. So my first pick for this is a record that came out only like a month after this record did, and it was NOFX's White Trash, Two Heebs and a Bean, which I think now that they've officially changed the record title. Like or at least they won't write it out. I think it's probably considered offensive. I know that there's like a story about, I can't remember, it was one of the band members told his either his father or his grandfather like what the name of the record was and got really upset. It's like, why would you say that about yourself?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, the original title was.
So it wasn't this title. It was
There was an original title that I don't think before it ever got pressed. Or anything like that.
I thought it was about this, because if you go and like listen to this record on like a music service or whatever, it just says White Trash, and then it has a bunch of like ellipses.
Wow. Well, that's.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, if you could have looked up the original title, it was definitely way worse.
Oh, I'm sure it was. If that was, yeah, that's probably worse. But I think in listening to this record, this record literally came out. Duh came out on October 1st, and then I think White Trash came out on like November 3rd or something like that. So they're like really, really close. And I don't know if it was just the fact that if or that Fat Mike produced that it sounds so similar in terms of like the music. But really, like, I do think that if somebody had never listened to either one of these bands before and you played these records back to back, you'd almost be forgiven if they said like, "Oh, is this the same band but with a different vocalist?" Because the really like the music does sound so similar. And obviously some songs don't, but for the most part, just like the general vibe of it is very much the same. But I think that White Trash, Two Heaves and a Bean is a much better record than Duh. Uh, it, although I would say that it maybe has lower lows because
I remember there being
there's
there's too many joke songs.
There's 3 joke songs. Or well, I mean, you can maybe debate whether the Johnny Appleseed song is a joke song, but it's the ska track and it's not great.
Oh, that is definitely a joke song.
I don't know, but they do. NoFX likes to mix in that sort of ska stuff on a lot of their records. So I don't know. Maybe there's like they definitely seem to at least like doing that type of stuff. So maybe it's not a total joke.
Yeah, I mean, it's been so long since I've listened to this record. The more I think about it, I should have done my homework.
It's all right.
At the time.
I mean, like it has it. I mean, White Trash has some of NoFX's like most well-known songs. I think this was easily like I feel like it's no contest. Like this is NoFX's like breakout record. In terms of like they're not really a known band before this, and then they did this one, and they probably got a lot more fans because of it. Even though what followed would really like sort of elevate them even more. But this one, it just, especially after listening to Duh. I mean, Duh is definitely way more aggressive overall, but they have the same sort of like speed and everything like that. But I just think that Joey Cape definitely has applies a lot more force and speed with his vocals compared to Fat Mike. But something like the opener, Sold Out, like Fat Mike sounds confident and very assured in the sort of his approach to singing. And it doesn't quite feel that way when I listen to Duh at times. So it's like he's got it's like NoFX has like a bit of a swagger that they didn't maybe have before. They definitely seem like a band on this record where they kind of know what they're doing. And that's why you get songs like Stickin' in My Eye and Bob, and Please Play the Song on the Radio, which are all really like there's really fun songs that I've really enjoyed kind of going back to this one and listening to it. But yeah, I thought it's very similar, but I think it's just a better version of Duh in some ways. So what record are you bringing to the Rival Records, Ben?
Yeah, so I'm approaching this segment in a way of thinking of kind of what are the things that are not necessarily sonically that I like about a particular band or particular album when trying to pick the Rival record. So I went with Farside's Rochambeau, which also came out in 1992. You had commented to me about how this sounded like would you say like something like Pearl Jam or something?
Yeah, it definitely reminds me of like 90s alternative rock. Yeah, I mean specifically it did. Like I'm not like I don't know. I'm not a Pearl Jam person necessarily in any way, but that is I think that is sort of the influence that's bleeding through on this one.
Yeah. So it's not skate punk shit that Lagwagon was doing, but I think that it has a lot of the things that made me interested in Lagwagon. A singer who has got a fairly strong, fairly good voice, as well as lyrically tend to be, I guess, kind of a bit more mature and introspective.
Yeah.
And then the guitars are fucking shredded. You know, they're not maybe shredding it in the same way, but they're fucking awesome. So
Yeah,
I
definitely. I mean, I can see that, I can see the like how you sort of connected the two. It makes sense. Like this is sort of like a different side of um I guess the spectrum of where Lagwagon is, but it does make sense that like somebody that likes Duh probably would have liked this record as well.
yeah, and I mean, like, I actually think that they both sound more alike as time goes on.
Hmm.
Like, I think that somebody that likes Haas or Let's Talk About Feelings would certainly want to at least check out the Monroe Doctrine. So, um,
Yeah.
I think that it's also a good rival record pick for that way. That they're two bands that kind of get even a bit more similar as time goes on.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as well.
All right, ready to wrap it up?
Yeah. Let's get our final thoughts on the record. What do you have like what are your favorite tracks? What would you uh like to see them get rid of? Is there anything that um you just didn't enjoy at all?
All right, so my favorite tracks were definitely Mr. Coffee and Beer Goggles. Um, as
Same.
far as trimming the fat goes, I think that I would probably the Batman Rising cover, I guess. I mean, it could also stay in there. I also felt like Bury the Hatchet um, could go. And then as far as the one that I didn't enjoy, straight up, that was definitely Child Inside.
Yeah. Yeah, that one definitely not on my list of ones that I really liked. Um yeah, I mean I tend to agree. I think when it comes to trimming the fat, I think I'd say you get rid of Bad Moon Rising, you get rid of Inspector Gadget, unless you want to put it as like a secret track at the end, but whatever. I just think it's stronger without it. And you've kind of convinced me on of Mind and Matter, like you do. You need a cooldown after such a hot track. Um, but I do think that like going back to this one it's been fun. I I kind of wondered how much I'd like this record coming back to it after all these years, and I do think I've got sort of a new appreciation for where it comes from. Um, I don't know,
So
like what
I
kind
should
of
we
what's
should
that?
point out it's been remastered, correct?
Yeah, and I think I listened. Yeah, I mean, because the version. Oh, okay. So here's something I want to ask you. Did you happen to listen to the version that has all the extra material on it? Because when we talked earlier, like weeks ago, about this record and about like what Lagwagon was doing before they did this record, and they were originally called Section 8, and then they were just like, oh, I don't want to, we don't want to use that name. There's a lot of other bands that are apparently using that name. And my God, I'm so glad they didn't call themselves Section 8. It's no good. Um, but all of that material is on the like it's in like bonus tracks in the re-release of this record. And if you haven't listened to it, you might actually get some enjoyment out of some of those songs, because to me, these have you hear way more of that sort of like New York style hardcore influence in those songs.
Yeah, they were very, very thrashy sounding songs. That song "Truth and Justice" is both terrible as well as kind of fun.
Yeah. It's like I hadn't even I didn't realize they had all that. I thought they were all demos, and then I started I just scrolled further down, and I was like, oh, this is all of the material from that time period, from before, even. And I listened to some of those extra songs, and it's it's something. It's something. It's definitely a different vibe than what they ended up doing. And they made the right choice in moving the direction that they did. But I was just kind of surprised at how sort of that influence was really coming through. But as far as the influence of the other bands that sort of I guess definitely uh, come through on Duh, I think RKL was a big one. If you listen to RKL's material in the late 80s, it definitely I feel like Lagwagon's really influenced by that, at least on Duh anyway, and probably even Trashed. But
yeah. I think
maybe
you can
this is
definitely...
a good place to pull in this quote that we have from Joey Cape. And this was pulled from Wikipedia, which it had a quote. I mean, it had a source, but the source was through Fat Wreck's website, and that link is dead. So we're just gonna kind of have to trust Wikipedia here that this is okay. But this is Joey Cape talking about the recording process for Duh, and he says, "Back then, we were inexperienced in the studio. It was less about the recording process and more about rehearsing. We recorded and mixed Duh in 4 days. There's something to be said for a budget. You have to have your shit together before you go into the studio, and the end result is a record that better reflects the band's sound at the time. I think that's why so many bands' first records are considered to be their best. Personally, I don't think Duh was our best, though." And I agree with Joey on every point he makes here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's spot on that Duh's not their best. But also, I think that kind of, if you don't have all the money in the world to record, it seems like you want to make sure that, I have no experience recording stuff, but it would just, make sense intuitively that you would want to make sure that everything was fucking, on point when you went in.
For sure. And yeah, I think in having to condense a recording period down to such a short amount of time, because we've all done enough reading on music to know that especially bands that actually have a good budget, they'll go into the studio for sometimes weeks, or if they're super rich, months, and record tons of music and just kind of experiment and play around. But when you're just an up and coming band and you have to pay for this very expensive recording session, you better have your shit together and just have everything kind of worked out, and you got to kind of work through everything without thinking about it too much, because you don't have time to think. You gotta record everything, and it takes time. So I think it's a really good point, and it does. I mean, it really does ring true that so many bands' first records are their best. And I think that those constraints really, I think, help some bands, I guess, work around any shortcomings and just kind of be themselves. But yeah, that's those are our thoughts on Duh. It's a pretty good record. It's not bad.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how often I'll ever return to Duh aside from the kind of the standout songs, but I think it's it's not terrible.
Yeah, I think I might pull a couple songs that maybe I hadn't thought of much before. Honestly, I hadn't listened to Beer Goggles in so long. I just kind of thought that it wasn't going to hold up, but it totally does. So, Mr. Coffee is no longer the only Lagwagon song that I'm pulling from Duh. I'm going to pull Angry Days and Beer Goggles, but yeah, it's pretty good. But anyway, that's going to do it for our first episode. We're encouraging anybody who has questions or comments, or most importantly, corrections, on anything that we got wrong, you can please write in to our email address, which is ontherecord@gmail.com, and it's spelled just like the show title, all one word. And that way we can, set the record straight on any further episodes about anything we got wrong. But we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about Propagandi's first album, How to Clean Everything. We'll see you then.